to join us, and then perhaps we can start this conversation. And by the way, we'll be recording this meeting so that once the whole technical review process of the PTR is done and everything, we can post it on the website we can post it on the portal for review. Anyone who has any questions about the property transaction review process, you can definitely go in and you can review it on the portal. And everyone will be muted upon arrival. Anyone who is not muted, please make sure that you mute yourselves. Having said that, it's 3 minutes past, so we'll be starting. Most all of National Grid meetings start off with a safety message. So if all of you are able to view my screen, I'll be starting off this webinar with a safety message from my colleague Ryan Miller. So Ryan, do you want to go next?
Sure. Can you go to the next slide?
Sure.
Okay. So my safety message for today is on workplace or occupational injuries. So on April 28th this week, it was Workers' Memorial Day. This was established to remember workers who died or suffered from exposures to hazards at work. In 2020, there were 3 fatal injuries per 100 full-time workers. So some safety procedures that you can do to decrease these injuries would be, first, have physicals for your employees. This can be done once a year before construction starts on a job. Usually construction can last anywhere from 4 months to a year. So this is another good time to have physicals for your employees. Next, we have provide protection equipment for your employees. This also means to make sure employees are wearing their protection equipment on site. So this means steel-toe boots, gloves, protective eyewear, hard hats, and high visibility clothing. So t-shirts, safety vests, jackets, and things that could be seen on the job site. Next, we have inspect and maintain company equipment and vehicles. So before leaving for the job site, inspect your vehicle. Test drive the vehicle, make sure nothing's broken so you can get to the job site safely. Once you arrive on the job site, inspect the equipment that's going to be used for the day. Go through the same inspection process, test the equipment out, make sure it works and nothing's broken. And second to last step is have adequate staffing, the right amount of employees on the job site. Overworked employees become tired, exhausted, then make mistakes and cut corners to achieve their end result. This can cause injuries to the employee or other people that they work with. A way to fix this would be hire part-time help or seasonal staff. And lastly, keep the workplace organized. This is both in the office and on site. Make sure pathways are clear. Make sure there's no sharp objects, no debris in the pathways that could cause injuries to people that you work with, and could cause damage to company vehicles or company equipment. That's my safety message, and thanks for listening.
Thanks, Ryan. That was really helpful. So now we have our lead right of way rep Pam Aspinall, who will be walking you through the PTR process. One thing I'm going to say is please reserve your questions for the end. On the end slide, we do have a Slido link that I think Steve already posted on the chat box also. So once this entire PTR presentation is over, you can post your questions onto Slido. And when you post your questions on Slido, I'm going to make sure that Pam gets them and Pam answers them on the call. So having said that, Pam, are you ready?
Hello, everyone. Let's start with the show. Next slide. Good. So when is there a PTR? And a PTR means property transaction review. When in a proposed occupations, whether it be a road or underground utilities, impact the right-of-way of National Grid that is not part of where the connection is happening. So this is an example below. So where this solar facility is connecting is at River Road, which is at the right of the screen. And then just at the end of where the solar panels are being shown, there's a sub-T line that is that there needs to be a crossing. So this is a good example of when a PTR would be used. Next slide. So this is just an aerial view to kind of give you a little bit better of an understanding. Again, here at the road is where it's the connecting facilities, and the project is crossing a sub-T line. So the PTR in this case would be reviewing the impact on that sub-T facilities. And what we look at when we do a PTR is we asked two questions. Is it safe? And is it compatible with our facilities? Are we able to operate and maintain them the same way that we did prior to the occupation? Next slide. There are instances when we don't use a PTR. So if you go back to that previous slide, if that sub-T line did not exist, there would not be a PTR. We would also do a PTR because we also have gas lines in what we call our central region and our eastern region. And if there's a crossing of a gas line, I mean, that's going to be an automatic PTR because a gas transmission line, because you don't connect to a gas transmission line. So if you're crossing gas, it's going to be an automatic PTR, and that's gas transmission, which is above 125 PSI.
Pam?
Hi, Pam. Yeah, we need to take a break for a second here. We're having some issues with some of our guests, external guests viewing the slides. Could we get anyone that can't see the slides raise their hand on the right side of the, I guess it's on the top of your Teams. Raise your hand if you can't see them for me.
Steve, how about I share the slides also on the chat box so that people who can't view the slides can open it themselves?
Great, that's a great idea.
Yeah, so just give me a minute. Oh, looks like we can't share the slide, huh? All right, just give me a minute. And
I know sometimes if you leave the meeting and rejoin, it works. It's happened to me before, but for the sake of time, if we could share them like that, might be better.
I stopped sharing my screen, so just give me a minute so that I can try putting this on here. All right, so I have placed the PTR PPT. So those of you, are you able to view it on the chat bar? External folks, can you please raise your hand? Internal folks, Steve, are you able to see me share the PPT file?
Oh, it just popped up. Yep.
Okay, so yes, can see the PPT. That's what Mark Weatherhill says. So perhaps I can't see it. Yeah, some people say I can't see it. Yeah, I just I just shared here. So yeah, perhaps we can Pam, we can continue. Just give me a minute. Let me open it up again and I'm yeah, so all right. We can, yeah, so if you if this is not accessible, then we can share it. And Ryan, would it be possible for you to send download this onto your file and send it as an updated email along with the invite?
Yes, I can do that.
Yeah. Okay. Ryan, once you're done sending the final PTR PPT out, make sure that you download the one that I just shared on the chat website. Okay.
Maybe you could save that file in the meeting notes rather than the chat, and then it'll be easier to access, and it won't be scrolling off what the joins and unjoins.
Yeah. The Rich. I don't know how it's possible to share the PPT on the meeting notes tab.
So I just resent the meeting invite again that has the attached PowerPoint.
So this is the meeting chat. All right. So let's get let's give it a minute, and then we can start it. All right. So I'm gonna start sharing my screen again, and those who cannot see, you'll get an updated email with the same. So please let me know once you're able to view my screen. Yep. Ryan, your email just came through. Okay, so are you able to view my screen? I just started from the beginning.
Yes, it's Liz internal. I can see it.
All right, thanks, Liz. I see Andy Melka. Can you see it? Sorry for calling you out like a professor.
Yes, I can see it, Shashank. Thanks.
All right, perfect. Okay, so we were here, right, Pam?
Next one.
Okay, yep.
So as I was saying that the connecting facilities is connecting, so where the solar is having the interconnect is at the distribution lines at the road. And then we've got the sub T because the solar panels are on the west side, basically where it says crossing is not part of the project. So this sub T is not part of where the connection is happening. So that right away needs to be reviewed to make sure that the crossings that are being proposed are compatible and do not impact the ability for us to operate and maintain these facilities, and that it's safe for both National Grid workers, contractors, and for the workers operating the solar facilities. Next slide, please.
We're done with this, right?
Yep. And then when it's not a PTR, then it's just the facilities that the connection is happening at. So there wouldn't be a sub T line that's crossing. So a PTR is not needed at that time for that particular site. Next slide, please. So when does it involve a PTR? And let's say that the in order to tap in to the facilities, there needs to be some structures with some switches on. There needs to be some guys. And if that guy wires, and if they come out of the easement area that we currently have, or is close that we can't maintain our facilities, then we would ask the requester to provide additional rights to National Grid so that National Grid can be able to operate and maintain those facilities that in the agreement that we are supposed to. So there's some examples, guy wires. I mean, these are things that have in our PTRs that we have, or in the non-PTRs that we have seen that right away is involved. It's involved in the project, but it's involved as a team member of the project, ensuring that we have the rights to maintain the new facilities that National Grid is supposed to be maintaining. Next slide. This is a copy of an application. It basically, for PTR, gives us all of who, what, where, when, how, and why. As part of your, as part of the process in your application, you will be getting a project work order number, and that's on the bottom, and that's what we would be charging for the time for PTR. Next slide, please.
Yeah, so Pam, if I might add, this application also has been sent as a part of the updated email that Ryan sent. Was it yesterday, Ryan?
Yes, yesterday I sent the all the documentation.
Yeah, so yesterday Ryan sent a bunch of documentation along with this meeting invite, and all these documents should be there. And after this call, maybe early next week, we'll be uploading both the recording of this call, the PPT, and all these supplemental documentation. We'll be uploading it onto our portal also for you to view. So, all right. Thanks, Pam. Shall I move on to the next slide?
Yes, please.
Okay.
This is an example of a plan and profile. And then it goes with that original slide that I showed with the solar panels on it. So the above is the it shows the plan view where the crossing is happening. The important things for National Grid in the review is the location, the proximity to the structures that we currently have there. And with the profile, what we're concerned with is the height of the wire conductor, so that we can make sure that the activity that's being proposed is safe. So again, the things that we're looking at is it safe? And does it have a negative impact on our ability to operate and maintain the existing facilities that National Grid has? Gas, if you're crossing a gas transmission line, it's going to be an automatic PTR, because to my knowledge, there right now we don't have any solar projects that connect to the gas lines. So your gas line is going to be an automatic, and the gas line is just as important as overhead. That's a lot of gas flowing through those pipes. So we need to make sure that everybody is safe out there in the fields. Next slide. This kind of gives our process, and this is it does take some time. Typically, you do not fill out the application for the PTR until the CEI group is finished doing their survey study, and then the PTR would be initiated by you completing the application and sending it in. The application, I will review them. I'm reviewing pretty much all the applications that come in to New York State, and if they are incomplete, it does not initiate our internal stakeholders reviewing the request. I make sure that everything is in order. Little things are showing our facilities that they're crossing with the distances, showing wire heights with the time, date, temperature, because then we can see what the SAG is going to be in a perfect storm. And again, it's safety that we're looking at, and not impacting our ability to operate and maintain these the National Grid facilities. Next slide. So if National Grid has thousands of miles of pipes and wires, and we do own quite a bit of property, so a license will be given if the occupation is approved. So we're going to be giving a license if it's on National Grid property. And then those occupations, based on what they are, that we have a fee schedule, and we calculate what the cost of the occupation would be on a yearly basis. Just the same ways that there's rental happening on the adjacent land where the solar, there's a rental happening on National Grid property, and that's in order to keep the ratepayers whole. Again, the fee is calculated. We have a fee schedule, and as a regulated company, we are not permitted to grant out permanent rights. So that's why a license is used. If somebody really wants an easement can be obtained, but that can take years. And what's the time constraint on that is we need to seek Public Service Commission approval if the internal stakeholders feel that the rights of an easement can be granted in this right of way. So as the requester, there's a lot of time involved in here, and there's also compensation for the easement, which needs to be appraised by an MIA appraiser, plus the cost to get the application and files to the Public Service Commission for their approval. So this can be a costly endeavor. Next slide, please.
Pam?
Next slide.
Oh, you don't want to talk about the easement right away?
Oh, sorry, I didn't.
Yeah.
It was
Yeah,
different in my presentation. I didn't notice the difference. Okay.
Yeah.
So if it's an easement, our typical agreement is going to be an assent. And basically the assent is National Grid saying, we see your occupations, we've checked it for compatibility, and these are the conditions that you must follow in order to be within this right of way. And again, it relies back onto the protection of the facilities that National Grid has, the ability to operate and maintain, and everyone's safety. Next slide. So now we're at the question period.
Okay, so what you can do is you can click into this Slido link. The Slido link is up here. Also, it's in the PowerPoint presentation that Ryan sent out, and on the chat bar that I think Steve Kissinger has added it onto the chat bar also. So if prompted, you can use the code DGNYPTR. So if you use that code, and you can submit your questions. And when you start submitting questions, what I'm going to do is I'm going to look at those questions, and any questions that come in, I'll be able to cascade them to Pam so that she can answer them. Yep, thanks, Steve. Steve just shared the Slido link again on the chat bar. By that time, by the time questions come in, Pam, we already have one question from Chris Stroud. Are gas line crossing insurance requirements the same as electric?
Yes.
Okay. Yeah. So he says $5 million aggregate, or are they higher? That was the question.
Yeah, they're the same.
Okay. Okay. Thank you. Steve, are you able to see any questions? I don't see any questions posted as yet.
I was just looking. I don't see anything.
Okay.
Looks like there was a
What
question
about?
earlier, and it may have been answered already by Mike Dow. If you didn't get a good answer to your question, looks like Rich took care of you though.
Yep, we are getting questions one by one. The first question is, does this process only apply to transmission level projects, or could it also apply to distribution level CDG projects? So Pam, before we go into that question, I'm kind of going to add my question into this also. Can you give a quick overview about the differences between a PTR process and a regular right of way easement process?
Yes, the PTR process basically reviews the compatibility of usage of a right-of-way that is not involved in the interconnection facility.
Okay. All right. Thank you. Going back, the first question was, what about access road over gas line? What is the process to have permission to build the access road on the gas line?
You have to do the PTR. And what we do is we look at how you're doing it, when you're doing it, where you're doing it. We take a look at the pipeline, the integrity of the pipeline, when it was built, what the equipment that is going to be going over the gas pipeline. So again, it's safety. A lot of times there's a solar project that's happening up there by Island Road. And this is what I don't want to happen, is that the gas transmission line was missed, and there's clearing that was about to occur where there's a gas transmission pipeline, and we got a dig safe call. And we flagged it, and we had to do a cease and desist until we could put into place the things that needed to occur. And in this case, what needed to occur, there needed to be an air bridge built over the top of the gas pipeline for travel.
All right.
When we have utilities, that cross the gas pipeline, typically the width, if it's an easement of the gas pipeline, is 20 feet. And we like the proposed occupations to be above the gas line with a minimum of 1 foot in separation, and that they be placed in conduit so that the conduit extends at the ends of the easement. So if those facilities need to be worked on, it can be done through the conduit.
All right.
Yes.
Thank you. One more question is, yeah, again, I don't think I let you complete answering this, Pam. Does this process only apply to transmission level projects, or could it also apply to distribution level CDG projects?
It could apply to what we call is backlot distribution facilities. Those are the facilities where we have a third party that we obtained rights, and it's not in the road right of way. If we're in the road right of way, then we adhere to the minimum standards that we have, that we're all sharing on a franchise in the road right of way.
Okay, perfect. Thank you. Mark W asks, is a pole sharing agreement achieved via a PTR?
No. A PTR, again, is, well, yes, it could be. It could be. I take that back. It could be. I just had to think about it. It could be because you're crossing, and versus crossing underground, you're crossing overhead. And it would just be like an underbuilt that when we have Verizon or whatnot on the pole. But specifically, we have to look at, again, if there's any other third-party attachments, and if that would conflict with any agreements that we currently have with the other third party. So that's underbuilt on or attaching to a structure that is not part of the project. You're crossing a right of way to get to your interconnection. So I just want to make that distinction.
Okay, there's another question. I'm not sure what it means. Is there a limitation to the license that makes an easement preferable in a typical solar easement situation?
To date, I don't know of any solar farm taking the easement route. Again, it depends on if there was any reservations in the deeds. Because again, regulated by the Public Service Commission, we're not allowed to give permanently anything away. Does National Grid make, I mean, we allow municipalities to put sewer lines, for, you know, forest main, water and stuff like that. And they're there on a license. You know, National Grid typically plays nice. But our first and foremost priority is to be able to keep the lights on and the heat flowing.
Yes, thank you. Okay, so there are two more questions which I think I can answer. Is the PTR application online on the National Grid portal? It is not. We'll put it online, but right now, as I said, you know, Ryan has sent it out along with the meeting invite yesterday. So the PTR application and all the requirements, all of them have been sent out. So you can definitely take that. Also, another question I would like to answer is, will the Customer Energy Integration Manager identify when a PTR is needed and when it is not? We do not. We do not. It's not CEI's responsibility to identify if a project has a PTR or not. It's up to the developers. So the developers have to look at their infrastructure, and if there is any potential PTR or if there's any potential gas line crossing, then they have to directly start submitting a PTR application and go through the process. So PTR is a process that happens in parallel and completely independent of CEI's DG interconnection process. So PTR is, dealt with Pam and her team, and it has to be definitely national. CEI does not tell you that this project has a PTR. So what has to happen is anything that is a potential PTR, the developer has to directly submit a PTR application themselves.
And one other thing is that the developer is responsible for their own due diligence.
Yes.
So if you know the site and you know the overhead wires and conductors, I mean, those are visible. The gas lines are marked out with witness posts so that you can see that the gas line where it crosses. And it's very important that when you're doing your designs, that you're locating the National Grid facilities that you're asking for the PTR on, you locate what the easement is and that you appropriately label what they are. I had one developer that I sent back the application probably about 4 times. They were crossing under a 115 line and they called it distribution. So it's important because these plans and profiles become part of the document that we produce. And we do not want someone who's actually performing the work to grab a hold of a plan and think that the voltage is a lot lower than it is. I mean, that's an accident waiting to happen.
Yep, good, thank you. And then, when requesting a PTR license for an access road under the T line, is the process much harder if I also need to bury the cable, or is it about the same?
It is about the same. We do. I mean, there's different circumstances because National Grid is is created from. It's basically a melting pot. There's several companies throughout the time that has become part of National Grid and is part of National Grid portfolio. So there were different methodologies used in different times. And there were different methodologies used by different companies in order to construct these transmission facilities. So there are some little peculiarities, and there's little peculiarities to the sites because you have different terrains. But for the most part, as long as you do not inhibit the ability for National Grid to operate and maintain the facilities, what you're putting in is safe. So if you're crossing with an underground crossing, then it must meet the DOT loading and unloading. if you're putting like a 34.5 line underneath the national grid within the right of way, we're going to ask for witness posts. Again, it's something that is really safety driven to make sure that we can prevent somebody from getting hurt.
Yeah. So thanks, Pam. Also, this question, if you can answer, what would the process look like to cross a public highway such as the I-90?
That is, you would be going to the New York State Thruway for
DOT. Yep.
an occupational permit. So when we cross the New York State Thruway, we are there typically, again, I use the word typically, on an occupational permit. And it is up to the Thruway to what they're going to allow. We do, you have the High Proximity Act, which there are certain distances that are and are not allowed. In some cases, because of how old the facilities are, we're there on easement and it gives us a different set of rights. But for the most part, as a general rule, that you would have to go through the Thruway for a permit on your own.
Okay. So another question: how would we address a situation where there is no marked underground line and no recorded easement for an underground line, yet National Grid is aware of the line?
It does occur. There is a line in Camillus that it is marked, but people put up fences and you can't see. They put up fences pre the GIS era where we have Google Earth and can look at everything. With the gas line, I usually catch it dig safe, because dig safe is a requirement in all of our documentation that you must call in a dig safe ticket. So National Grid would be alerted in that case by a dig safe ticket, and then I would be involved, just like I said, at that one on Island Road and Northern Boulevard, and we had to stop the project for a bit while we put together an agreement on how the developer was to act around the gas transmission pipeline.
Okay. The application states land use application for wholesale generation transmission projects and requires an NISO Q number. Is the process different for CSG projects? Pam, this the application that you sent, as far as the PTR process goes, it doesn't matter whether it's a wholesale generation project or a DG project, right? I mean, so long as you get the documentation and the information you require, that application that you sent out, that should hold good, right?
Correct. We did that. We just revamped our whole PTR process, and for both non-solar projects and solar projects, so that they're a little bit more geared to what they're asking, because our typical application is about 5 pages long. So we're just asking for the front page because our internal people have the rest of the information. We're giving you we're giving you the gas backfill. We're giving you gas conditions. We're giving you the engineering documentation for the transmission lines. So we're giving you a lot of that, and you're having engineers who are certifying these plans, so they should understand the language in these documents, whereas a homeowner might not have the same grasp of the information.
Okay. And by the way, Rich, thanks for answering the question. Someone had asked, what a subtransmission line is. So in National Grid infrastructure, any project any voltage level that's above 23 kV and above is considered subtransmission. So 13.2, 4.8, 4.16, all these are considered distribution level voltages. And anything that's 23 kV, 34.5, 46, all these are considered subtransmission level voltages. So, and Well, I think we have answered all questions. If you had any questions, please type it out here. And those of you who do not have access to Slido, I think you have access to Slido because we shared the link both on the PPT and on the chat box. And if you still have any questions, please feel free to type the question up in the chat box of the Teams meeting itself.
I have
Um,
the last comment that I'd like to make.
Sure.
When we're inundated with calls, it slows us down. And I know the big thing for everyone on this call is time. So we do the best that we can, and we try to process these as fast as we can. And within the slide and the information that was given, there is a timeline that we try to adhere to. We try to, again, treat everybody the same. So we have the same set of criteria for company A to company B to landowner Z. Again, it's treating everybody the same way. So when things are backdoored or multiple calls, it slows us down. And if you would just kind of be considerate of the process, it would go a long way and help us a lot.
Okay, so Pam, I actually shared the timeline slide again, if you can see. So you might want to explain this timeline again, because a couple of questions we got was, someone said, are we safe to assume that this process would take 75 days in total? So would you want to go through this timeline slide again, timeline
Sure.
chart again?
Sure. So a completed application is sent. Okay. So when we get that application, somebody from the real estate reviews it to make sure that it's complete. You could go back to the first box because it wasn't complete, because something was wrong on the drawings, that some facility was mislabeled, or the easement width wasn't put, or there's a number of things. The structures weren't put, the height of the wires weren't provided. So then, granted, we have everything that we need, we go to the next step, and that can take 50 to 60 days, depending on the complication of what's being asked. Typically, the typical things that solar companies ask is for a utility crossing and a road. So those are kind of normal. We do add different circumstances when it becomes National Grid's property, because we have to make sure that there's no environmental concerns when we're digging, that it hasn't been a contaminated site. That another thing is, like, if you're over by Montezuma, we have those osprey that we have to consider. So if there's some special circumstances, that's where you're going to go at the higher end. And if it's, something that is, you followed all the conditions, we have a typical area, then it's going to go on the lower end. Also, which, when we get into the summer, which has an impact, is we have different internal stakeholders. So there can be up to 10 to 15 people internally that are reviewing your request. During the summertime, more people take vacations. So, it's getting that stuff back, but we do stay on them in order to get the, to keep with our timeline. Also then, we'll let you know whether it's been denied or approved. Then what we do is we create a document, an agreement that fits the situation. And then you're in the driver's seat by turning it back to us. So we don't allow the work to happen until we have an executed agreement, and then we have received the proper insurance. And then once you have the agreement, it's notification to the team members that would oversee to make sure things are done safely, and that procedure has been followed for safety.
Okay, another question is there any typical distance or setback from the fence or a solar facility to a National Grid line? Does it vary based on voltage, height of line, etc.?
It's First off, it's based on what the easement area, because the easement area prohibits that kind of occupation to have a fence, because then that blocks the ability for us to operate and maintain our facilities to go up and down. So as long as you're out of the easement area, if we feel that there could be possible stray voltage and that somebody could possibly get a negative impact, then we would ask that that fence be grounded. But as long as it's outside of the easement, because we obtain the rights that are necessary to operate and maintain that voltage of facility. When you're doing the, when you're working with a gas line, this is something that's a little bit quirky, is that our gas line easements, like I said, are 10 foot from the center, 20 feet wide. We mandate that a watch guard is there for any excavation within 20 feet. Now, the watch guard is initiated by calling dig safe. And if there's a high, there's a transmission gas line there, or there's a gas transmission regulation station there, it pops up as a high priority. But even though you're outside in that circumstance, you're outside of the gas line easement, we request that a watch guard be present for any excavation within 20 feet of that gas line. Again, it's safety.
Yeah. Also, Pam, where to send the application? No email is mentioned on the application form. So
it's my name right there on the top, and that we have on the.
Okay, so we do send it out to this email, right?
Correct. And so if you send me an email and you say something's coming, I'm going to give you my home address, because we're still working from home, and ask for a hard copy to be sent, because when you're sending it electronically, you can lose the scaling. So I like to have a paper copy so that I can check scaling.
Okay, so another question. Hang on. Follow-up to setback question. Some easements are broad rights across 70 or 80 acre parcels with no clear defined easement with width. These easements are 60 plus years old. I don't see a question there.
I understand what they're saying, though, because
Okay.
we're working on one that's like this. When National Grid was purchased, when Niagara Mohawk was purchased by National Grid, Niagara Mohawk was involved in hydros. And when National Grid sold those hydro properties, National Grid retained rights on that property for existing facilities and future use facilities. So therefore, and matter of fact, we're having one of our first that we're looking at how to, we understand that by looking at that deed, that National Grid has the right to be any place on that property in the future or now. And that's hard to develop. So what we're doing is we're looking at where and how much we really would need to be able to do anything we want. So looking at that, and then how we legally amend the rights so that we're still keeping the ratepayer whole. We're allowing the land to be developed. So I hope that answers it.
Okay. In a scenario where National Grid scope of work for our project, such as line extension to POI outside of project parcel, crosses a gas line, is a PTR from the developer required?
Yes. Always going to need a PTR for a gas line, because you're not connecting into a gas line.
Okay. Okay. So that definitely answers things up. So I guess we did answer all the questions that are currently posted on Slido. So we got close to 20 questions, plus a couple of them on the chat bar also. Are there any other questions that you would like to ask, or is it safe to assume that all questions have been asked and answered? So one thing that would definitely happen is sometime next week we'll be posting the documentation, the webinar recording, the PPT, and all the supplemental documentation that Pam has sent out, that was sent out along with this email. All of these would be posted on the portal website, National Grid's DG portal, so that you do have access and you can see all those questions regarding the PTR. But yeah, one thing that is definitely a takeaway from this call is the due diligence should be done by the developer. So neither, us, at least CEI, we will not be responsible for warning the developer of a potential PTR. And having said that, if you do have any PTR related questions, you feel free to submit an application, and Pam would get involved with the process. Right, Pam?
Yep, that is correct. And I'd like to just kind of, for feedback and I don't know how to get it. It might be through Slido or show of hands. Do people find this helpful, this information?
Yeah. Hey, Pam, can you hear me?
Yes.
Okay. Yeah. Sorry. This is Adam Wingard. Yes. Very, very, very useful information here. Thank you. Thank you very much for the presentation today and the additional information. I had one kind of follow-up question. I was the one who asked the question about the scenario where the N-Grid scope of work for our project crosses a gas line, basically a National Grid scope of work outside of the project area parcel. So in that scenario, right, where we as a developer are developing the project on a dedicated parcel, however, National Grid scope of work, requires a line extension outside of our project area, basically outside of our parcel. I guess, how would we know if there is an existing gas line associated with the National Grid scope of work to do that line extension? Because we're not pulling title, right? We don't have like easements for every single parcel where National Grid scope of work would actually occur. So I'm curious as to how we would solve, like we wouldn't even know if a PTR is required. We wouldn't even know if there is an existing line out there associated with National Grid scope of work to do the line extension. So I'm kind of interested to hear about PTRs.
So you're saying that the National Grid gas facility hasn't been built yet?
No. So I'm thinking of a scenario where National Grid, there's an existing underground line that exists, say, east of our parcel, right? And we have pulled our title, right? Done all of our deed, easement searches on the parcel where we're actually physically installing the system. However, this existing gas line exists east of our parcel, and National Grid has to do a line extension over that gas line. How would we know that a PTR is required for that National Grid scope of work? Because we'd have no information about what's happening on the parcel, next to us, if in fact work is required there from National Grid's end. I'm just trying to solve.
How is it impacting your parcel?
Well, that's what I'm saying. It wouldn't be. So it would not be impacting the parcel we're actually installing on.
It would be just like regular development happens? So if National Grid needs to extend and needs to do work, or we have to look at the sites and we have to get, the additional rights that we needed where they're available. So it's just like a regular project. We do have a situation where we have a current right-of-way electric corridor transmission, and we are extending service, and our transmission easements, for the most part, for electric transmission, only allow for electric transmission facilities. Within that National Grid electric facility, we are proposing to put a gas line in, so we need to go to the landowners, the underlying landowners, and add that other facility, but we're not going outside of what we already have for the electric. So the prohibitions are still there, and not changing the prohibitions that the landowner would have to really adhere to. So we're utilizing that corridor in a more congested area. So as long as we're not, it's basically who gets there first.